Hi, my name's Martin Wilson. I'm CEO of Digital Identity Net. It's a company that aims to make the internet a safer place by connecting all corporates to all banks for the benefit of all consumers. Welcome to the Inspiring Leadership series, and I'm going to hand you over to Jonathan Bowman-Perks.
Thank you very much indeed, Martin. And Martin, it's lovely to have been working with you for the last 2 years and seen how you've transformed and turned around Digital Identity Net. Just tell people a bit more, because this whole area of the internet, for some, it's a very complex area to understand, but we've got all this problem of trolls, people sending to anybody, whether they be famous or just personally to people, emails that really destroy them. Literally destroy their confidence and their business and their life. And no one knows who they are. They can hide behind something.
The best description I've heard of this was only a few months ago, working with our brand agency. And somebody said, when you're working on the internet, you're working online, it never feels quite right. There's always something at the back of your mind that there's always a risk that somebody's recording your keystrokes, or somebody can see through the camera on your laptop, or there's always the risk that the person that you're interacting with isn't a legitimate person and is, as you've already alluded to, trying to create some scam or other. There's always a risk that your personal details will be stolen and sold on or abused or exploited in some way. And I guess that over the last 2 years, that's become very much more prevalent as more and more of us are using the internet more because of the circumstance we've seen ourselves in over the last couple of years. People have become more aware of it, which is a good thing. People have become more aware of the risks of working online and of the kind of abuse that you can see as a consequence of working online.
Yeah, and actually you talk about abuse, which triggers for me a thought that Lee, who works with you as well, my wife, she set up a charity, the Inspiring Leadership Trust, which is to help abused girls and women, modern day slavery, trafficking, mental health issues, and they get groomed by people who don't exist, and they're certainly not young girls who are their age at 16. There's some man who's trying to get them into a situation, and often does. So it really is becoming, we're seeing that much more prevalent. It's a real threat. So we desperately need a solution to this problem because no one's cracked it yet, have they really?
Yeah. And so but let me explain the macro, and then I'll come back to your point. I think is probably the easiest way to do it. The ability to, when I said in my introduction, trying to make the internet a safer place, I'm not suggesting that Digital Identity Net can cure all ills online, but if we can make a contribution to an individual sense of security when they're online, then we've made we've got a worthy cause, and I would consider our job well done. And now that can be just ensuring that I know who you are and you know who I am, and I'm confident that's a true connection. Or dealing with if you're a corporate organization and you've got somebody making a purchase, knowing that is a genuine purchase and not a fraudulent transaction. Or if you're a bank, knowing that you can intercept payment fraud, and the root solution here is just to make sure that you can verify the identities of the two parties that are interacting with each other. And that's what digital identity does. It enables that verification of the transaction so that it is seen to be a trusted and safe transaction. Okay, and everybody has confidence in that.
Yeah. And
I can explain how that all works in a minute. But to your particular point, imagine a world where when you're on social media, which is a hotbed for some awful abuse in all sorts of different ways. Imagine if you could be sure that the person you're engaging with online is who they say they are. And imagine if you could eliminate the risk of the anonymous actor who sends the most horrendous abuse in the most horrendous directions and all sorts of subjects and unimaginable. But if we could eliminate that anonymous abuse, it's a good example, because we're not saying that therefore we would take all abuse off social media, but we could eliminate anonymous abuse. So therefore you reduce the overall challenge there. And in so doing, you change the psychology of the people interacting on social media. So to your particular case, if there's grooming going on, parents or individuals themselves can say, well, look, why don't you only interact with people who verified their identity?
Yeah.
You can choose only to interact with people who verified their identity, and therefore you know who you're talking to. Our service ensures that there is no doubt about the identity of the person at the other end of the transaction.
Yeah, that's really good.
And so eliminating an anonymous abuse on social media, it would make a massive step to make that whole environment a safer place.
Brilliant, brilliant. And look, congratulations on what you and the team are doing and the product you've developed, and the way you intend to make a significant difference, a dent in the universe, as it were, in your own way. You're now a CEO. You're just about to celebrate your 60th birthday. Congratulations. You've had a lot of experience over the times you've been, head of IT transformation at HP. You've done a whole variety of different roles in banking and in complex areas. You've been a CEO, a chief commercial officer, and now you're a CEO again. What shaped you as a man from a young lad when you were born, or where you were born? Just tell us a bit about, in 5-10 minutes, a bit about your history and what shaped you to be the leader you are today with the values you have.
Well, so I'll tell you, right, I have to go back in history. So I was born in a place called North Shields, which is on the mouth of the River Tyne. It's about 7 or 8 miles outside of Newcastle, right on the River Tyne. I was born there and grew up in the next town down, a place called Whitley Bay, which often gets a mention. It's infamous or famous for some reason. So I was born in the Northeast. I was the youngest of 6 children, and of those 6 children, 5 of them were boys. I was the 5th boy, so from pretty much from birth, and anybody who's the youngest in a family will appreciate that, I was in competition, always in competition with my brothers for attention, for food at tea time. To be allowed to play football with them, whatever. Yeah. There was always that trying to keep up with the older brothers syndrome. And I often think that, well, obviously there's a bit of nature and there's a bit of nurture here, but I think if I look at the nurture side, I think that attempt as a youngster to keep up with the older boys, and there was the next one is 3 years older, and when you're young, that's a big gap. That kind of competitive edge was instilled in me at a very early age, because they were quite brutal, as boys often are. And so I can definitely relate to that. I've probably forgotten the rest of your question, but so when you come to sort of say, well, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? That was a key element which meant, when I think about my career and how I pursued my career, I pursued my career as if it was a competition. And it's often just a competition with me. I wanted to get on. I wanted to achieve things. I wanted to deliver stuff. Whatever job I was in, it's always had a target. It's always had a goal in mind. And I do often think that it's kind of related back to that young kid trying to chase his brothers and keep up with them on the football field. Yeah,
well, I relate, being the youngest of 3 boys. And my middle brother sadly died last year, but he was 4 years older than me, and then the eldest is 6. And so I'm like you, very competitive. But also it's interesting in looking through your your varied and wide range of experiences you've had, that when I look back, I saw that you're in the DSS, the Department of Social Security. And one of my friends who worked there, he said, our job is to keep society secure, because actually if people aren't paid, there'll be riots and there'll be problems. And he said, when I worked behind the cage, paying people, if they didn't get what they wanted, it could get very violent. And he said, you know, so that's very interesting. And you, of course, began in one of your earlier jobs as a fraud prevention officer. And here you are, full circle, now back trying to stop these fraudsters scamming people for money or for whatever nefarious ends they have. So really interesting. And if we were to look at, in the whole of your life, a proudest moment for you and a darkest moment for you, and what you learned from each of those experiences. Begin with a proudest moment, and then perhaps talk about a darkest moment in life and in work.
Proudest moment from a work point of view, I think that there's been quite a lot. I have to say, that sounds awfully braggy, but I suppose, I think proudest would be a hard one to call, because there's many peaks in the mountain range. So I could pick a number of them. I think the one that was one of the highest peaks was introducing the faster payment service into the UK. And again, the story behind that was you know, has a lot of kind of grit and determination in that. So I've got a long background.
Was that Bax?
It was by the time that happened, it was a company called Voca.
Yeah.
And the story there was that I've been in payments for a long time, and the payment system in the UK at that time was a bit of a laughing stock. It took 3 days to clear any payment back in those days, and we were the worst and slowest in Europe. And eventually, the regulators mandated to the banks that they would have to improve the payment service. That was the direction. Just improve the speed of clearing in payments. There was a number of enlightened people, not many, but a number of enlightened people who said, okay, rather than just improve and get to par with everybody else, why don't we take a leap forward and get ahead of everybody else and introduce the first real-time payment system in the world for high volume payments. This is low value, high volume payments. So leapfrogging any other service that was available anywhere in the world, and leading the team that won the bid to deliver that service, and against some pretty notable competition as well, was a big moment. And I suppose the reason why, of course, is because everybody uses it now. And that's that, and it's nice to know, and everybody takes it for granted, which is again really nice to know.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that Digital Identity Net can do the same thing on that, making the internet more safer place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite.
And what about dark moment, personal life, dark moment in work, and what you learned from both those?
I think what I learned I think the end lesson is the same. I'll do a bit of dark moment personal, which isn't particularly original, because I'm sure many people have been through it, and I know many people have been through far worse. But going through a divorce when I did many years ago was an incredibly difficult time, and very dark period for probably best part of 2 years. And the thing that lifted me out of that was work, going on a management development residential course for a week, and meeting and building a team of people that became very close and very mutually supportive, understanding the value of team and understanding the value of being able to get things done alongside people. And that was the kind of jolt that I needed to just kind of pick myself up, dust myself down, and start all over again. And I guess in a work context, is again not very original, but people can always pick that time, I was telling my team actually one where we seem to have success in our hands on developing a business proposition. And there was an all-staff conference, and I stood up on the all-staff conference and listed 13 clients that had signed an MOU to join our service. Got a standing ovation. Everybody was chuffed to bits. They'd only signed the MOU though. None of the 13 went live with the service. And that was devastating. It was devastating.
And that's not in your current firm. That was in a previous.
No, this is way back. And again, the lesson I learned from that, apart from dust yourself off and start all over again, was the power of follow through. Don't rest on your laurels. Make sure that when you go out to deliver something, it's not finished until it's absolutely finally delivered and the transactions are flowing through. The service is live and your clients are operational, fully operational.
Yeah, very
and,
wise.
Know, to use the cricket analogy, you can hit the ball, but you can hit the ball far if you know how to follow through with the bat.
Beautifully put.
And that's a good lesson in anybody's career.
Follow through. No, I really like that one, and I've seen it in even if it when I worked with the Department of Work and Pensions for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it may have been a good process of whatever they had. That the software was quite exciting and new, but the people didn't buy into it, and they found ways of sabotaging it and stopping it happen. So yeah, follow through in many ways, not just the technology, but with the people. Get the people bought into it, and then thank you for that, Martin. And then, what piece of advice would you have given the younger Martin Wilson, age say 16, if you'd gone back to the future and said, lad, this matters, but this doesn't? What advice would you give to a young person these days, based on your experience?
That's a tough one. And I guess it's kind of a reflection on who I am and my career. What I always tell my boys is, of course, work hard and be successful in your career, but make sure that you put happiness first. And I think I would condense that down to make sure that you manage your work-life balance. And that's not to say that you don't go the extra mile. It's not to say that you don't put your shoulder to the wheel when it's needed. It is to say, though, that you don't want to be looking back and saying, I wish I'd spent more time with the kids. I wish I'd spent more time doing something else, and it can uncontrolled ambition can run away with you, and then the price you pay can be quite high. So you've just got to be able to balance that.
Yeah, very true. No, and I resonate with that myself in my own marriage failure. There was many reasons for it, but I think one of them was I was too caught up in my career and not focused enough on the relationship. I gave a lot of time to the children, but I think I could have got the relationship better. And so I think that's a very wise bit of advice about getting that balance.
I would say, John, I'll emphasize though, that's not to say that you can't do both. You can do both, and you can be seen to be going the extra mile, and you can go the extra mile, but you can do that on both sides of the equation. So if you're spending a lot of time with your work and pursuing your career, and it's a highly demanding job that you're in, that's fine. That's immensely rewarding in and of itself. Make sure you do the same on the other side of the equation as well, though. Yes. You don't do one at the expense of the other. That's my point.
Correct. You take yourself to work from home, and you take vice versa. And I think it's important to get that. You won't ever get balance in work and life. You never have equal amounts, but it's that work non-work balance. So you are, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, as they say, and you've got to get both right. Very true. Let's go around the Inspiring Leadership Compass. Quick fire sort of questions, Martin, really from your experience. Starting with MQ, with the sort of true north compass, your values, your upbringing. What would you say? I remember you showed me in your room there. You've got all the badges of the different mining pits, and I thought it was really quite impressive, the collage of that. Why does that matter? And what are your foundational 3 values?
I don't know whether I could risk showing it.
You can.
Shoulder.
Yeah, swing it around.
I'll just swing it. I won't get in close.
Yeah, that's a huge collection. Yeah.
So that's a collection. I came across that poster, and apologies to anybody watching. You just got a blurred image there, but it's a picture of the badges from all of the mining communities in 1985.
Yeah.
And it's a collection of all of the pits, the badges from the pits that were closed between 1985 and 1995. Now, I haven't actually ever counted them, but there's a lot of them, as you probably saw.
Mm.
Now, I'm not going to get too political on this, but it does trigger a value question. Whatever your political views of the miners' strike and the Thatcher era, the thing that hurt me and still hurts me is not what was done, but the way it was done. Mm. Many of those communities have never recovered. Many of those communities are still in strife even now, because the industry and their lifeline and their community was torn out of the heart of them, but no remedial action was taken, no recovery plan, no alternative was accompanied the action. And as I say, many communities just never recovered from that time. Mm. So if you think about, if you convert that to what's that got to do with my values, my values are around integrity and trust, and making sure that you pay good regard to those around you or the community, and not that you're just in it for yourself.
Yeah.
And that was an era which changed society hugely. In fact, there was a phrase, "There is no such thing as society," wasn't there, used at that time. And people became more selfish and more self-orientated. And if they weren't totally selfish, it was only looking after their immediate family and not thinking in the sense of community.
Yeah.
So that's a key value.
You just recently celebrated becoming a B Corporation.
Yeah.
And that's important too. Do you want to just explain to people why that's important to you is in Digital Identity Net?
Yeah, well, it kind of the whole thing, travels through, because what we're trying to establish in Digital Identity Net is that sense of community. We're providing a solution that is for the benefit of UK citizens, to keep them safer when working online. It's a community play. And the company was very much founded with a social purpose, to build a public service with private investment. Okay, the first kind of privately funded public utility, if you like. Because when safety online is too important just to be purely driven by the profit margin. And so as part of building our product and service, we also need to build a company that is known for its integrity, and it's known for its trust, and known for its social purpose as well. Because we're dealing with people's personal data. So we've got to have that's got to be our reputation too. We've got to be trusted in order to be able to enable this solution to work. And so being a B Corp was an essential component of that. And a B Corp really is a commitment, if you like, from the company that says they will work to the best ethical standards, whether that's in environment, or whether that's with their staff, or whether that's attitudes towards equality and diversity, or to their customers. We work to the highest levels of ethical standards, and we have the processes and audit trail to prove that we do. Yeah. And so therefore you have to be accredited to be a B Corp. It's not just words. You have to be seen to be practicing that.
Yeah, and you're very lucky to have Richard Little as your chairman. Tell us a bit about your connection with Richard and why he's backed you all?
Richard's amazing person. I would certainly describe us as chalk and cheese. We've had very, very different backgrounds, and we've got very different personalities and complement each other very well. Richard, I describe Richard as a serially successful investor, angel investor. His success rate is phenomenal. He's been the founder investor in many companies, most latterly Form 3 and Thought Machine, which has just gone unicorn recently. And I've kind of known him, well, I've known him for the best part of 20 years. And we used to just meet for dinner and a chat. He always tried to encourage me away from big corporate into startups and more entrepreneurial business. And I was too worried about me mortgage and bringing up the kids. So they eventually came an opportunity where he said, "Can you just have a look at this business and see how it works, and let me know what you think?" And so I did, and I came back and I said, "This is fantastic. We need to get involved." He, like I say, we're opposites because he's got a high risk appetite. He's an angel investor, so you have to have, that's what you have to be born with that gene. But he's got a good nose for good business as well. And I absolutely trust him implicitly. If he's confident about the direction we're going, then I'm happy to say I'm happy to trust his judgment because he's been there so many times before. I think what he looks in me is that more grounded, delivery focused person. He calls me dour because he probably thinks I'm unadventurous, whereas he is very high. I'm risk averse, where he's got a high appetite for risk, and therefore we complement.
That's a good combination. And that leads me on to the next one of the 8 components, PQ, meaning and purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing now? And why have you done the kind of different roles that you've done, which have all led you to this in the sort of payments and transformation and IT? Why do you do that? I
love delivering stuff. Ultimately, when somebody asks me, describe your career, I often say I'm involved in business transformation, and that probably is at the macro level what I've been involved with. My time in the DSS, it started as fraud officer, but I very quickly went into large systems development. That's in an age where the whole of the DSS was being computerized for the first time, which again gives me age away. And that sense of purpose and the drive to deliver and the deadlines and targets that we had to achieve. And in the end, you built something and you made a difference. And being in a role where you deliver stuff and you make a difference is hugely rewarding. And I do a fair amount of, I wouldn't say mountain climbing, I do a lot of fell walking in the Lake District where I live. And I use this analogy a lot. When you've got to the top of a range and you can look back on what you've done so far and the hills that you've already climbed, it's immensely rewarding. And then fires you on to do the next one and the next one. Once I'm up, I don't want to come down.
Well, I also have enjoyed over the years doing that, mountain marathons, crazy things I did in Cyprus and stuff like that. But it takes me nicely on to the next one, which is health quotient, health and well-being, mental, physical, living in the lakes, which is a happy place for me. It's so nice to hear that. So what are you doing as you approach your 60th birthday very shortly to keep yourself physically fit and also mentally fit? Because mental health problems abound for many people and many organizations, particularly in the 3rd year of the pandemic that we're going into.
Physical fitness, I suppose I've already alluded to. I've been climbing the hills in the Lake District since the age of 8. In fact, the first time I climbed Helvellyn was age 8.
Wow.
And the first time I climbed it on my own was 2 weeks later.
Wow.
So I've been climbing the hills, and that is what I love most of all. And it also is the ultimate for my mental health.
Mm.
I'd rather be on the fells on my own, and that's including without even the dogs. They're not listening at the moment, but just on my own. But if somebody asked me after 5 or 6 hours of being on the fells, what did I think about? I wouldn't be able to tell them. And just be able to just free your mind and just walk and be out there and enjoy and have nothing in particular to think about is immensely healthy. I haven't had a chance to do much of that in recent years. And again, that's kind of, what would you tell yourself? You'd tell yourself to make sure you made time to keep fit. And the pandemic helped. I lost 3.5 stone during the pandemic.
Wow.
Because during lockdown, what lockdown gave you the opportunity to do is build a routine that suited your own personal goals, not fitted in with the regime of the business. And so being able to schedule in time to go for long walks, take the dogs out, do exercise, and then make sure that you kept the discipline not to just pile it on with chocolates, was a way of just getting back to proper health and taking some of the pounds away.
So here's the challenge: when you plan the next team offsite, I will join you in the Lake Districts, and let's get the team, and Lee will come as well, and we'll bring Archie, and we'll go and do some of the places you like. Not try and kill everybody, but just give them an experience of just how fantastic the Lake District is. So how about doing that sometime in 2020?
Sounds like a plan. I'm delighted. I love my team, and I think they'd all be up for it.
Yeah.
And again, one of the things about taking a group of people is that it does teach you a sense of responsibility to others, because you have to stay together. You can't have 3 a mile ahead and 3 a mile behind and then call yourself a group. No, you've got to be within calling distance of each other, and that changes people's mindset quite readily and easily.
Very
Good
much
plan.
So. Yeah, no, and in fact, it reminds me. You talk about you going up at Helvellyn aged 8. I think I must have been about, maybe I was 12 when I ran with some friends from Halifax up Ben Nevis. We'd been sailing on the coast. The father had a boat. We sailed on the coast, and he gave us, I don't know, 5 hours or something. He said, "You got 5 hours. Go as far as you can." Well, we ran up to the summit and back down again. It was just nuts. So lovely to hear that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the lakes. Okay, EQ. You're in a world with technology and systems problems and delivering big systems. It's not known for being brilliant at EQ. Very good at IQ and analysis, but you have very good EQ. I've seen it. I've experienced in the way you handle challenges you have with individuals or people in the team who are in a difficult place. You've always been there for them, and they've always appreciated that you sensed they were going through a difficult time and you cut them some slack. Very special. Not many can do that. How have you developed that? And what's your tip to people about developing good EQ to look after your team?
I think that was a lesson learned quite late on in my career, and I think it probably reflects changes in management style. In the time that I was referring to before, when we were delivering large scale systems for the DSS, that was very much 100% delivery, 100% command and control to get the job done. But over the years, I think there's been a lot more focus generally on ensuring that while you can still push and drive delivery, you can actually achieve a greater level of productivity by just being aware of how people react and acknowledging people react in different ways and respond to different things. I guess if I picked one word, I'd probably say listening. I went on a course 1,000 years ago. It's only half a day or something, It was called active listening. I'd never even heard of the phrase at the time. And it was just somebody explaining and then getting you to practice what active listening was. And it was a great lesson. And people kind of condense it and say you got 2 of these and 1 of them, you know, all that kind of thing. But actually, if you just say less and listen more, it makes a huge difference in terms of what then happens up here for you, and then what comes out of here as a result. And that's kind of something that's developed over my years, is being able to listen, assimilate what's being said, form an opinion or a direction as a result, and say, right, okay, here's the deal. This is where we're going. This is what we should do. And it embraces the thoughts and opinions, views, contributions from many other sources, not just your own.
Yeah. And I've seen that in the way that you've absorbed the thinking environment, where you want the innovation and the creativity, and everybody gets their chance to speak, and you don't assault each other's thinking, and you live that one well. One of the things I've also noticed that you do better than other companies is you genuinely believe in diversity, equality, and inclusion, and you want a diverse executive team, which you've achieved, and you respect differences. Where does that come from, and why is it so important in your opinion?
Well, it comes from the same place as the discussions we were having about the mining villages and things. It's that sense of, you know, recognizing that, first of all, everybody's equal. Secondly, everybody's got a contribution to make, and everybody's contribution is very different. And so, if you can broaden, from a commercial point of view, if you can broaden the wealth and depth of the contributions, then you're going to have a stronger and richer organization. From a social point of view, it is making sure that we don't fall down the thousands of traps around assumptions and prejudices, and even, you know, unconscious bias, because that limits the very essence of an organization. It limits the very essence of an individual. So it's going to limit the essence of an organization, and limit its ability to be as rich as it can be. So we've driven that hard, and found techniques to make sure that we recruit the best from the widest. To, you know, techniques such as blind applications, so that you don't see things that unconsciously might prejudice you. Like, you don't see the names of the applicants, you don't see photographs, you don't see things that give away their gender or their backgrounds, and you look at the individual themselves on an equal footing, no matter where they're from.
That's brilliant.
And everybody that's joined who's been through that process, so it's an amazingly enlightening process to go through. I haven't heard one single objection to go through that process, and the company's become richer for it.
Yeah, it definitely has. It's lovely to see. Quick fire questions on resilience, brand, and legacy, Martin. So resilience, you know, in the world you're in, you're always going to have setbacks. It's never going to work out. There's going to be problems. There's going to be faults. The software won't be quite right. The hardware won't be right. What's your one tip on resilience and picking yourself back up when it's all gone horrendously wrong?
The tip on resilience is that, well, if I'm not careful, I'm going to give me top tip that I'm supposed to save till the end, aren't I? But the thing about resilience, I think you do have to allow yourself, I was going to say, the opportunity to mourn. So if something goes wrong, you've got to allow yourself to swear, cry, sulk, throw a tantrum, you know, even if it's just for the rest of the day or something. You've got to allow that outlet. But then turn that around and say, okay, so who's gonna get out of that then? Who's gonna get you out of that? Because they're not gonna, you know, no one's gonna do it for you. You have to pick yourself. You have to pick yourself up. I was talking to me eldest son yesterday. It was his birthday yesterday, and he was saying that we in our family seem to walk very fast. And I said, I wonder if that's come from my dad. My dad, when I was little, he didn't make any allowances for me being 6 years old walking alongside. He walked fast, and I had to run to keep up with him. And it's kind of, you know, when it comes to resilience, it's kind of, well, nobody's going to wait for you. So allow yourself time to have a rant, and then you got to put your running shoes on, and catch up again. Just don't do it.
That's a great story. Great story. Love it. Brand. Brand is, brand quotient, what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's your, your brand, your reputation, your image. What have you done to get feedback through 360 and psychometrics or whatever to learn about yourself and improve and learn?
Funny enough, right from the start, right from very early on in my career, I always asked for feedback, and it was always 360. I used to do, and I still do from time to time, the stop, start, continue. What 3 things do you want me to stop doing? What 3 things do you want me to start doing? What 3 things do you want me to continue doing? That's always been first of all, it's very simple, because you don't want to put undue burden on the individual. But secondly, it's very informative. And so I used to do that a lot. I do it less so now, because I think what I've done with my leadership teams for quite some time now is to enable them to feel like they can speak freely. So our meetings our discussions at exec level are very open, and occasionally can be heated. Knowing that it's a safe environment to express an opinion, and also knowing, and this is my part of the bargain, is that it'll all be heard, and then there will be a conclusion. One of the ailments that we often have is that we often shut down disagreements. It's just not British, is it, to have an argument across the table? And I don't know how many people actually like the phrase, "We'll take it offline," which in other words is, let's kick the can down the road and hopefully nobody will bring it up again. And I don't like the take it offline nonsense. Let's discuss the problem and we'll draw a conclusion. My side of the bargain is we'll draw a conclusion, and we'll find a way forward, and if necessary, I'll make the decision.
Yeah,
and I think that's okay, because that's part of what being a leader is. In the end, you have to make a decision, you have to make a call, and it's a judgment call, and sometimes it just falls to you.
However long you stay as the CEO of Digital Identity Net, when you eventually hand over, or whatever you decide to do, or go into real retirement, what would you like your legacy to be for the team you've built up and the organization you're growing? How would you like to be remembered?
I think from a corporate point of view, from inside the company, one of the things I've loved about this job, I had the opportunity to establish the company pretty much from scratch, which included defining the culture of the organization. And the people that were in the company at the time, we spent a fair amount of time actually talking and writing down the kind of organization that people would like to work in. What are the values of the company? What are the expectations that you have on your colleagues? What expectations should they have on you? Literally kind of writing down the ideal culture that you'd want to work in. And then being able to define that and set that as the benchmark for the company. And I'm delighted I had a couple of one-to-ones earlier today with people who were relatively new into the organization. In fact, they've been here a month, and they both said, love it, love the job, love the people, love the enthusiasm, love how everybody's helpful, love how everybody just wants to rally around and get the job done. And our key values are around trust and integrity and delivery, and curiosity as well, finding ways to make the company or the world a better place. It's what we're about.
Yeah. And also you've successfully had this sort of office optional approach of, work is an activity. It's not a time or a place. And so people have got work done. And at times you've been together, but other times people have been very disparate, haven't they?
Yeah. And that's based on trust. There's a contract from day one where we allow people to choose how they work, and we trust that they will work. And as long as they've got to be available for their colleagues and things like that, of course they do, and but they can choose how they work. The other side of the contract is that they've got to be productive, and they've got to meet the standards that are expected of them. And just placing that trust on the individual, first of all, is immensely empowering for them. But also from a company point of view, you get an awful lot more out of the individual because of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I think some terms ROWE, results only work environment, that you're focused on the results and how they do it, up to them, as long as it has integrity and that there's a healthy culture. Yeah. Okay, we're down to the final couple of questions, Martin. Executive teams, and then we'll talk about a book, and then we'll give you a 2-minute top tip. Executive teams, over the different jobs you've done over the years, you've inherited individuals or sometimes teams that are toxic, and you've had to turn them around. What would be your one tip to people listening and watching on how you turn around a toxic team or a toxic individual, what you do with a toxic individual?
I think it's stages. I think there's a discovery phase where you use your listening skills and your EQ to understand where the challenges are, and therefore see if there's ways of exploring whether making adjustments would make a difference. I think there's another stage where you try and build the team so that the team have a sense of identity and a sense of duty towards each other, and that often works. I tell you what, I'm a big fan of deliberately having team building exercises, because it's a conscious landmark in the development of an organization where you get people together, you acknowledge each other's strengths and differences and challenges, and then you can address them together. The dynamic in a group that goes through a deliberate stage like that is a very marked difference when they've been through that. And ultimately, though, there are times where you just have to address the problem. And like so many other things, it gets worse if you dither. Somebody once said to me a few years ago now, by the time you're experienced enough, Martin, you know when somebody's not going to make the grade. So deal with it.
Yeah.
Because it comes to a point where you're not going to be able to improve it. So you just got to deal with it. And that's part of being a leader. You've got to make the tough decisions. You're not there to be Mr. Popular all the time. You've got to make the tough decisions.
That's a really good one. Yeah, it's courage, moral and physical courage. Thank you for that, Martin. Favorite book on leadership? And you said someone nicked your favorite book, or you've lent it to someone. They haven't
There's
returned.
a gap in me. There's a bookshelf just here, and there's a gap where it was, because I would have just reached it and gone. Not particularly original, but it doesn't make it any less powerful. Long Road to Freedom by Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, love it. Why do you like that one?
Because, well, if you think about what we've been talking about, and God's sake, don't ever think that I'm anywhere near the caliber of that individual, but that resilience and determination and drive and personal integrity to go through, not just to go through what he went through, and he suffered far more than he ever describes in his book, but to come out of all of that and still have the big picture in mind, and to still understand that actually revenge and retribution were absolutely the wrong thing to do, whereas reconciliation and rebuild were absolutely the right thing to do. And having the strength of character and the strength of purpose and the vision to be able to drive that message home across a nation who would have been well justified in revenge and retribution was just an awesome thing to do. And his book describes it all very, very, in a very, very civilized and mature way.
I think it's beautiful the way you've drawn those key points out. Thank you. So, Martin, would you, for the final top tip, would you introduce yourself and your organization, and then give your 2-minute top tip, and we'll finish there.
Okay. Hi, my name's Martin Wilson. I'm Chief Executive of Digital Identity Net. It's a company that aims to make the internet a safer place by connecting all corporates to all banks for the benefit of all consumers and all citizens. My top tip is kind of in 2 parts. Kipling, if you can keep your head when all around are losing theirs and blaming it on you, in a leadership context, if as a leader, one of the great skills that you have to develop is finding ways to get over, through, or round a problem, and demonstrate leadership by taking an organization or a team over, round, or through any problem that they might face, keeping your head when all around might be losing theirs. That's my top tip.
Brilliant. Martin, thank you very much. Thank you for your candor, straight talking. You were the man I know you are and that others find inspiring. Thanks for being on the series.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks, Jonathan.